too. So, oh man, I think I'm a couple beers in, waiting for Fishing Kit here. So took a while for him to get home. But all right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Beer Fish Fanatics. It's Grandy, Mop Pop Fishing. This is
Kit with Fishing Kit, Sunburnt Kit.
Sunburn. Because last episode I forgot to even let Kid introduce himself, but everybody did. You know, if you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on this, I just want to make sure you guys are aware he is completely sunburnt all over his lips, all over his ear. Your ears are red too, bro. It looks like you had a see. You know what you needed? You needed a Mop Pop Fishing face shield to help cover your face. You know, FYI, if you guys ever want to.
I had a face shield on, bucket hat. I'm rubbing like sunscreen all over me. I even like had long pants on and a long sleeve shirt on at one point, but I still got toasted because I probably saw like, I don't know, 2 clouds in like 4 days.
I mean, it could be good or bad. In this case, it's bad in regards to the sunburn. So
Yeah.
Hey, at least you were out fishing on the water. You can't complain too much, right?
Yeah, but I'll take overcast days over sunny any day.
Yeah, I hear it. All right. So this week, I am, so everybody can see, doing a new craft beer here. This one is it's Shirley Brewing Company. I believe it's up in Minnesota. Hold on, somebody might fact check me on this one. If not,
Yeah, Shirley's in Minnesota.
Yep, it is. Because I swear I went to that brewery when I was up there before. It's in Minneapolis, Brooklyn Center. And this one I'm doing, again, it's supposed to be hot all week in the 100, or I think in the 90s with the heat index supposedly close to 100. So I'm going fruity again, fruity craft beer. So I'm doing a Shirley Brewing Company called Mango Supreme Tart Ale with mango added. So I'm going to give this one a shot and see how that goes. What are you drinking, man?
I've probably done this beer like twice already, but it's just what I have in the fridge, and that's from Exile Brewing Company. It is the Zoltan Session IPA.
Yeah, I think we did that a couple times. Obviously, I love Session IPAs. I love IPAs, period. But that one's actually a really good one. If you guys are in Central Iowa, definitely try that one out. That's a good IPA for sure, or at least Session IPA. So, all right, cheers, man.
Cheers.
Definitely mango-y. So, anyone's wondering, it does have a little tartness to it. So, I'm not a huge fan of sours. This is probably about my max on sourness. So if you guys ever try this beer, this is about the max. I don't think I could want to go too much more sour beer. A lot of people love sours, but I would have to say this is definitely my max on it. But
yeah, I had that one not too long ago, and I'm not a fan.
And like I think talking to a brewery owner, I'm just like, beer's like food. People have different tastes. Some people love spicy. Some people don't like spicy. Some people can handle spicy. I mean, I always tell anybody whoever drinks IPAs or who never drank an IPA is like spiciness. I love spicy. I can eat spicy, right? You talk to a lot of people, they cannot handle spicy and they don't want no spiciness, right? So that's the same thing when you're drinking an IPA, in my opinion. Some people can't handle the bitterness. Some people just want a beer, just whatever beer. They don't like the hoppiness of it. So I guess that's in my opinion. I mean, that's the closest analogy that you can get in regards to beer and food. I think so. Spiciness. That's always the way to go on. At least the hoppiness, that is. So, but we'll get into this week. Last week, Fishing Kit just got back from Kansas doing his a lone trip that I wish I could have been a part of. Obviously I can't. Thinking kids, but he gave us an insight into his chasing the blue catfish and how he did over there, trying new things. He also talked about getting out of your comfort zone and everything, and how he did pretty much something completely he normally doesn't do in regards to fishing off a kayak, where he anchored down and and fish, and versus drifting. And it's like you said, try something new, get out of your comfort zone. You never know what's going to happen. You never know whether this will be successful or not, because you can't expect to do the same thing and catch fish all the time doing the same thing, in regards to, especially if you're going after a new species, I think, right? Would you agree with that? Like the thing is, because when you're fishing up here in central Iowa and you fish a specific way and you catch fish, because that's what you've known and that's what has produced for you. But when you're chasing a different species, do you feel that I need to try something new because it's not going to work the same what I expected to?
Well, yes and no, because drifting for blue caps works like it works really well. But like getting away from that, like the anchoring and suspending, instead of like with drifting, you're trying to find the fish, and when you're anchoring, you're trying to have the fish come find you. So it's like polar opposites. It just depends. You just got to know your fish patterns and whatnot.
Gotcha. And then now, I'm also curious about your setup and everything when you guys are catfishing. So I think I asked, I think you guys this a couple, I don't know how many episodes ago, but like your catfish rig setup, like I said, I go out catfish. I put what I used to normally do. I put a heavy weight hook on the bottom, cut bait, whatever lure, and just chuck it, right? So there's all these different types of rigs that have specific names and everything. What do you normally use, and what is it? Can you explain a little bit, or is there any, or do you use a vast variety of setups? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, when I'm dragging baits, I use the Santee Cooper rig, which is you got your sinker on your main line on your line, then you got your, I guess if you use a leader, I always use a leader. So I got my main line, which is 65-pound braid, with the sinker slide. The purpose is that it lets the sinker slide back and forth, so it's not fixed in place. And then with the Whisker sinker one, you can switch out it has a clip, so you can switch out your weights. So let's say you want to drag 2 ounces of weight and you feel that it's too light, depending on the wind and stuff, you unclip it and put on 3 ounces, which is what I was using all weekend, 3 ounces. Then you go down to like either a swivel or a snap. And then I got my leader line, which is 50-pound mono. It's bright green. I don't think it really matters for catfish. It's like bright green. It can be clear. Catfish aren't really line shy. Then I have a rattle. And the purpose of the rattle is just to make noise. It's probably not necessary, but whatever little edge you could give yourself, why not do it?
So I have a on my line right now, I think I have like 30 pounds and 30 pounds for both, like my main line and my leader. Is that enough? Or do I need more now talking to you?
For Iowa, no.
Okay.
Unless you're fishing like heavy structure, you don't really need heavy line. And well, unless you're fishing 1, heavy structure, and 2, heavy fish, which isn't really something that you do. Mm-hmm. Like you're not fishing in like brush piles or like rocks and stuff. And Iowa doesn't really have that much big fish. Channel cats, 15-pound channel cat is like insane. Even like anything double digit, like 10 plus, is like rare in Iowa.
I agree. Well, unless it's like a big old Asian carp or something like that, or
yeah. Well, I'm just talking about catfish.
Yeah, catfish. Yeah, you know what? You're right. It's rare. It's not like you target that, and even that, I have 30 pounds on it, so it should be able to handle that. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah. And then going back to my setup. So after the rattle, I got a float. It's a peg bobber. And then after the peg bobber, I try to leave like, a couple inches to a circle hook. And for channel cats, I usually use a 6/0, which is plenty big for channel cats, but not too small. I mean, if you look at a 6/0 circle hook, for the uninitiated, like circle hooks look huge. Like a 6/0 looks huge, but that's not a huge circle hook. But I think it's perfect for channel cast that we have. You know, I could catch channel cast anywhere from, let's say, like couple pounds all the way up to like 10, 15 pounds. And the purpose of the float is when you're dragging that bait on the bottom, the float is gonna hold that bait from like dragging in the mud. And yeah, because you know you got your sinker dragging on the bottom. If you don't have a float on there, your bait's gonna be dragging in that mud too. So the float just keeps it up.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. Can you explain? Okay, I mean, I don't know if anybody else have this this knowledge. Obviously, I probably don't. But can you explain a little bit of the odds? So you say 6-aught. So what's the difference between a 6-aught, 4-aught, 5-aught, 2-aught, 1-aught? Hook. It's like, is it bigger, smaller? How does that work? I mean, could you explain a little bit about that?
I don't know the reasoning why behind the numbering system, but like if it's just like a number, let's say number 1 versus a number 4 hook, your number 1 hook is going to be bigger than your number 4. But if you're getting into the aught range, it's the opposite. So your 1-aught hook is going to be smaller than your 4-aught hook. I mean, I don't know the exact terminology behind it, but that's just how it works.
Yeah. See, I didn't know that for a long time. Well, I mean, I just recently kind of understood that, but for a long time, I didn't know. Like you were just saying, like, okay, so this is the number 2 hook and this is number 4 hook, right? Like you're just saying the 2 was bigger all of a sudden, but then all of a sudden when you go to the aught, 2-aught versus 4-aught, like, okay, I'm confused. You know what I mean? So I guess that definitely explains it a little bit. Now, so you use the 6-aught for the catfish, you said?
Channel cats, yeah.
Channel cats. So if you're going for flatheads, what would you use size-wise?
See, the thing is, I don't really flathead fish, but from talking with Denny and Spencer about flathead fishing, like the type of flathead fishing they do, they run heavy line because they're like fishing heavy structure. So you don't want to give that fish any give because they're just sitting like on a pile of trees on a small river, and they don't use circle hooks. Like the way circle hooks work is, you want the fish to grab your bait and basically just take off with it. But if you're fishing tight structure, you don't want a fish grabbing your bait and then taking off, because then it's gonna go like way deep into like a whole bunch of trees or rocks that you get stuck on. Mm-hmm. So they use J hooks.
What's that?
Just a J hook is a regular hook. It looks like a J.
What size though? Is there a specific size?
Just depends on your bait.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then depends on how big of a fish you want. Like when picking hook sizes for catfish, you want to determine, or you want to base it off of how big of baits you want to hook. That's really the main determining factor. I guess it goes kind of with how big a fish you're trying to target, but you shouldn't go out buying hooks based on trying to catch big fish. Obviously you want bigger hooks for bigger fish, but you want to buy your hooks based on how big of baits you want to hook. Like with the circle hook, if you're putting like, let's say, how big do you think that would be?
He's showing, for the listeners, that might be a diameter of about 4 inches, maybe 4 or 5 inches.
Yeah. So if you want to
lure,
the bigger bait you want to use, the bigger hook you want to use. You want to proportion your hook size to your bait. So if you're using small baits, you don't need a big old like 10-aught circle hook. But if you're using big baits, you want to match, I guess.
They match each other. No, that makes. I mean, I didn't think of it that way, because you're right. Because I think when they go buy hooks, they would buy hooks to match the size of the fish that they're targeting or thinking that they're going to catch. Versus like you just said, versus like if I'm only using a 2-inch chunk of meat, it's not going to make sense to use a big freaking hook on, or you know what I mean? No, I mean that totally makes sense. And I think, like I said, people who, whether they're just starting getting into catfish like myself, and others, they probably don't think about that. And that, that to me, that helps me in regards to when the next time I go buy a hook that, okay, if I have a small shad that I'm going to be using, I'm not going to just buy a big old hook to just because I think I'm going to catch a 20-pound catfish or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the mistake a lot of people and the mistake that a lot of people make with circle hooks is, like, when you look at a circle hook, they look huge. Because Chris, he was using a 10-aught, and it looks huge. But then when you think about it, with circle hooks, is the point faces back to the shank, and that gap isn't that big. Even though like the hook itself is huge, that gap is what's important. Because that gap is what's gonna allow the corner of the fish's mouth to get hooked. So, and another thing a lot of people mess up with circle hooks is they bury the hook into the bait. Like with circle hooks, you want to hook it as little as possible as you can without fear of losing your bait. So let's say you got like a beer can sized bait. Like, I'm probably only hooking it in, like, if I get away with it, just the lip on top.
Really?
Yeah, if you get away, without your bait flying off, the less bait you have in the hook, the better for circle hooks. Because the more gap you got exposed, the higher chances that point's gonna find a home, as they call it.
Huh, that makes sense. No, I didn't even think of it that way. So no, that definitely makes sense. So that's and then you mentioned you use 2-ounce too. Is that normal, what you normally use, or when you catfishing off
Like,
a kayak?
Well, like, it just depends. Like, bank fishing, like I fish mostly lakes. Like, lakes are, big ponds, small lakes, whatever. There's no current. 2 ounces, it lets me get my bait where it needs to be, and I don't need a lot of weight because there's no current. But in the kayak, it all depends on the wind and how deep you're fishing. Like, if I'm drifting shallow areas, 2 ounces and the wind's only blowing like 4 or 5 miles per hour. It all really depends. Like, on your depth, the wind plays a huge factor, because if the wind's blowing and like 10 miles per hour, your baits, if you're moving fast enough, your baits are gonna lift up. Yeah, so you want more weight depending on the wind.
I always wanted to ask you. I think I talked to a little bit of what you use, but how about wipers, man? When you're fishing for wipers, what size hook and what weight do you normally toss? Because I see if you guys go check out Fishing Kid's channel, he fishes a lot for wipers, and I see you. It seems to me that you have a good high percentage when hook ratio. You know what I mean? When I fish with you, I rarely ever see you like, shoot, I missed it. Shoot, another bite, I missed it. You know what I mean? It seems like when you get that bite, you set the hook and you're on. So I guess you can say, what size hook and what weight do you normally use that you feel is like the target size?
Okay, all right. As far as weight's concerned, I try to use the lightest jig I can without getting hung up on the bottom, but I want to fish near the bottom. So like if it's like, let's say I'm throwing 3/8, and depending on current and water depth, if that thing's always like banging up on the bottom and getting snagged, I want to downsize it to like a 1/4. I want to get away with the lightest I can, or is it heaviest I can?
I think a little bit of both. No, you're right, because you want it the heaviest where it's going to get you near the bottom. It's going to stay on the bottom. It's not going to just go with the current.
Yes.
You want it to sink, but you don't want it to go sink all the way down and just stay on the bottom. You want it just so you find the in between, like you were just saying.
Yeah, like I try to get away with the lightest sinker or lightest weight I can that allows me to fish near the bottom without getting hung up on the bottom.
No, that helps me out. Now I know when I'm going to go wiper fishing what I need to do, because you're right. Because sometimes I don't I just put whatever weight on. I don't think about it as much, and I just cast, and then all of a sudden there goes the current. Just literally, I know it's not even close to the bottom. You know what I mean? Because it just literally takes it. But then there's other times when I put the same weight or whatever, maybe the current's not as fast. All of a sudden, chuck it out, snag. So I think you're right. It's like you gotta find that in between depending on the conditions. So I never really thought about that, but it makes sense because if you can fish near the bottom without getting snagged, that's going to be about the perfect weight and the perfect.
Like, yeah, there's no like one like, oh, quarter ounce no matter what, or 3/8 ounce. It just depends on the current, the depth, and where in the water column you want to fish. Like for those wipers, well, at least in the spring and fall, you want to fish close to the bottom. But in the summer, you want to fish, if it's like shallow water, obviously, you want to fish close to the surface. But, and as far as hooks go, like, see, I don't really look at hook sizes for like jig heads. But like the longer the shank, the better. Because I'm using, 5¼ inch bait. Mm-hmm. If I got a hook that's like barely goes down like 1/2 inch and then the point comes up, I'm not trying to use that. I'm not trying to use that hook. I want to hook with a shank that's going at least 1/3 of the way through the bait, and then that way the fish isn't short striking it. So if they bite like half of it, but then your hook point's like 1 inch away still, then your hook's too small.
I think a lot of people who get into fishing, and especially the beginners, you're right, that's something that you don't really think of. You just get a hook, whatever hook, and the sad thing is sometimes you just go buy the cheapest whatever hook and weight, right? You just get it, you just put it in, and I think quality makes a difference too. The biggest issue that I see with wipers and even catfish is that if you buy hooks, you spend the money, and the reason being because the hooks make a difference in regards to when it bends, because these fish are big and they fight hard, especially wipers. I think you were the one who told me, like, dude, don't buy the cheap hooks because they bend. They'll bend your hook if you get a cheap hook, and if you land a freaking 5 to 10 pound wiper, it can literally bend your hook, and then you'll lose the fish, right?
Yeah, I mean, just like hook. When I look at hooks for wipers, like I stay away from wire hooks, because wire hooks bend. They're either gonna bend back and the fish is gonna pop off, or the hook's just gonna break. The good thing about those is if you get snagged, odds are you can bend it back enough where it'll get unsnagged. But if you got a stout, sturdy hook, if you get that hook snagged, odds are you're gonna lose that whole jig head. So it's a trade-off, I guess. Yeah. But I'd trade losing a few jigs for some big fish.
I'm with you on that. I mean, if as much as they cost, but I'm definitely with you on that. I mean, I'll lose a few jig heads and to land that big fish. Another thing I've noticed, I don't know, I talked to some of my vendors and everything too, was that, have you noticed that a lot of stores are running short of products and everything, fishing items and everything, accessories? Because I went to a couple stores recently. I'm just like, the big box stores or whatever. I mean, they're just short-handed everywhere, it feels like.
Well, I'm like pretty much set as far as tackle is concerned. I'm not like going out hoarding or anything.
Must be nice.
I buy, I wouldn't say bulk, but I buy a good amount so I have on hand. So I haven't been to Shields or Bass Pro or any sportsmen like to go buy fishing tackle. But I know that they're like running short because it's the whole COVID thing. Tons of people aren't working. They're bored. They're going out fishing. So you got I can't call them weekend warriors because, they're not working. So they're just going out probably every day. So you got all these people that normally aren't out fishing. They're going up to the big box stores, buying everything out. And then I'm pretty sure production is cut back due to COVID too. So like COVID, we call them COVID anglers. They're going out there buying up all this stuff, and then taking up all the spots.
It's all right. No, I mean, just as long as they don't cross your line, I guess. I don't know. Hey, I actually, speaking of that, I've been seeing so many things on social media about how people are getting so angry about fishing spots and how people are just fishing in their fishing spots and stuff. I don't know if you saw that one in California in the Bay Area. And, oh my God, that was funny, dude. But
Wait,
yeah, I know. Yeah, I'll show you. I'll send you the link on it, man. It's pretty funny. But yeah, I just seen a lot of people on social media just getting all angry how people are taking their spots and stuff. It's kind of crazy.
Oh wait, it was like some Asian dudes and an older white guy, right?
Yeah, and the guy was just like, dude, I got here, get here earlier. You can have, he goes, well, I'm a local, whatever. And the guy's like, what? You know what I mean? In my opinion, I'm like, okay, first of all, it's you don't own the land.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like you don't own wherever that lake is. Anybody can fit. And he was there first. I would say, like, yeah, that guy should probably, get that. You can't just tell him to leave because you fish there more often than anybody else does, and he was there before you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know I complain about the COVID anglers and like taking all the spots and stuff, but I'm not gonna go there and be like, hey, you can't fish here because this is my spot, even though you were here before me. It's public, so it is what it is. But with more anglers out there, spots are gonna be taken up.
Yep. But you know what? It's a positive thing too, because I see a lot of kids out, and I see a lot of families and kids out more fishing, which is awesome because I think it helps the sport. I think it also gets people out, get fresh air, get away. In my opinion, get away from the social media, get away from the news and stuff. Sometimes it can be a negative effect. I think of it this way, man. I've never seen an angry or an unhappy person who caught a fish, like a good sized fish.
Well,
ever.
Yeah. we were getting angry at channel cats that we were catching.
Oh, see, so that's the other one. That's when you catch too much, man. I don't even want to talk to you guys, man. You guys catch too much damn fish. So, well, we'll end this here, though, man. I mean, like I said, I think you had a great trip. I wanted to know a little bit more about your way of catching fish, size and everything, of hooks and weights. But I think you pretty much told me it depends on the situation, depends on the weather, depends on the lake, the current, the wind and everything. There's no magical hook size. There's no magical weight size. There's no magical anything, right? Pretty much.
Oh, and before we end it, with the catfishing, I only use bait. Like I don't use stink baits, punch baits, or the Jello stuff. So I don't know anything about that kind of fishing. It's not my style. Like I don't use blood bait. All those prepared baits.
I know I tried those, like you're saying, never had luck with them. I don't know. I mean, other people live by them, and then there goes Fishing Kid. So if anybody's watching on YouTube, or anybody's listening, FYI, he just completely dropped his phone. So
dropped it again.
He dropped it again. So on that note, guys, so thank you for joining us. Well, you guys have a good weekend. Get out there, catch some fish. We'll see you guys next week.
All right, see ya.